Hey there everyone, Badger here, narrating another video for Vadim. Today we're going to talk about cut content in GTA San Andreas. According to the leaked mission sources, there was going to be an option to make Molotov cocktails by using the pumps at a gas station. The idea was kinda basic. If the streaming script is assigned to a gas pump, then when you walk close to one, the game will suggest buying Molotovs for $50. If you agree to this offer, Carl gets 12 Molotov cocktails, and you can keep on doing this until you run out of money. At first glance, this cut feature makes no sense. I mean, you're literally buying the Molotovs from a pump, like if it was a Molotov vending machine or something. But trust me, there is solid evidence that it was scrapped very early on when it was mostly just a simple concept. The answers lie in GTA Chinatown Wars, where the developers gave this idea a second chance. By visiting any gas station in the game, we can make Molotov cocktails in a cool minigame. First, we pay for the gas and fill an empty bottle with it, and when it's done, we stuff a washcloth inside and the Molotov is ready. Apparently, Rockstar wanted to do something similar in San Andreas, but it never made it that far. Here's why. If you destroy a pump, the script will put a Molotov model in its place, and you can still buy these throwables, not from a pump, but now from a Molotov. The string you see in the help box on my footage was probably never implemented in the game, because it has no proper label, not to mention that it was probably temporary. And finally, the animation the script uses while buying is actually Carl giving the finger. It's definitely not final either. All three of these facts prove that Rockstar stopped working on this feature very early on. Since it was a streaming script, it's worth pointing out that you could do it anytime you wanted, even during missions. Would it have been a cool feature for this game? You decide. If we enable the debug functionality in the leaked mission scripts, then we can spawn these two weird red boxes while creating weapons pickups. These are the mysterious cut weapons, Gunbox Wee and Gunbox Big, which are defined under gift-type weapons in the internal files. But don't get your hopes up. If you pick them up, nothing happens because there's no code left that would have made them functional. So what were these made for? Why don't we go down that rabbit hole now? Knowing their nature of being gifts and something you can give to your girlfriend during a date, it's safe to assume that these are jewelry boxes, a small one and a big one. By the way, wee is Scottish slang for small. Rockstar North is based in Scotland, so there's no doubt that this model was named by a true Scot. If you ask me, I think this whole thing had something to do with the removed DeCock jewelry store, which was supposed to be located on a street called Dix Road in Los Santos according to the official manual we got with the game. Sadly, there's no such place in the game anymore, but thanks to the leaked text sources, we now know that this shop was going to have an interior that we could have visited at some point. Apparently, this is where Carl would buy jewelry to later give to his girlfriends as gifts, but nothing is left from this feature apart from these red boxes. They're not even coded into the melee weapons like the rest of the stuff is in this weird gift category. I bet everything surrounding this feature was ditched very early on. But despite all of that, the store franchise still exists in San Andreas, but as DeCock Diamonds. There's a silly radio commercial for it.
Nothing says I love you like a lump of carbon mined by wage slaves in Angola at DeCock Diamonds.
As well as at least one ped mentioning divesting from these specific diamonds out loud.
Divest from DeCock Diamonds, brother!
What's also worth noting is that the DeCock brand later reappeared in the HD universe. But there's nothing out of the ordinary about it, just another familiar in-game brand you see here and there. According to the leaked mission sources, there was going to be boat races in the race tournaments, but it seems that Rockstar didn't make it that far with them. There's only one coded that we can enable, called Boat Race 1 Dinghy. It starts in Fisher's Lagoon and ends in front of the Ferris wheel in Santa Maria Beach, but there's a huge flaw with it. As soon as it starts, your opponents will pilot their boats right to the shore. It happens because the developers didn't code the AI to go to the next checkpoint if they're operating a boat in the racing tournaments, so I had to implement the missing code using Rockstar's techniques. But even after that, it didn't help make the race more entertaining. As you can see, everyone drives really slow and they'll ignore obstacles in their way. There's definitely something wrong with the boat AI using a path system or something. Eventually, they'll all roll over and drown themselves. But hey, did you notice that we're actually operating a Jetmax instead of the dinghy like the codename would suggest? If we change it back, then it would be a lie to say that the race was better with a dinghy. It feels even more underwhelming now. In the end, despite the fact that Rockstar wrote a lot of code to support boats in the race tournaments, there's too much evidence that they cut this feature about halfway through, having just one race prepared without working AI. If my theory is right, then there were going to be 6 different boat races, and they would go under the codename Race 25 through Race 30. They've also been commented out in the sources. If I guessed it right, then the boat competitions would have been the last edition of the racing tournaments, which would explain a lack of work in the sources. We don't even know where these boat races started. I bet they didn't even have the locations decided by that time yet. Another interesting cut feature that I want to talk about is the ability to buy and build various properties around the map. In the first ever detailed preview of the game, the article states that purchasing buildings in San Andreas was much more important than in Vice City, and to emphasize this, they included a quote from Dan Houser, the creative director at Rockstar. He said,
"It was something we touched on in Vice City, when you acquired property and got this sense of starting to build an empire. That whole thing has been taken a lot further. In Las Ventura, you'll be able to run a casino there, which you will have bought and built."
End of quote. Back then it sounded very promising, but once we got the game, acquiring properties in general wasn't that different from how it was in Vice City, and there was no casino to either buy, build, or run. In other words, we didn't just buy an asset, but we could invest money into it and run it. This is how sophisticated acquiring properties in this game once was. Despite the fact that Rockstar never talked about this feature in detail, we can learn a bit more about it by simply examining the game itself. The first solid clue is left in the shopping.dat file, where we can find a blank section called Property. This is where the developers assigned price tags and other special attributes to various stuff you could buy in these corresponding submenus. There's a clothing section, car mod section, and many others, including property, suggesting that something similar was planned for properties too. And you could definitely waste hard-earned cash like that because at some point, the game could track how much money was spent on building property in the stats menu. Now it doesn't, and funny enough, internally its enum is now called Not Used Float 3. But the question remains, what else could we buy and build apart from a mysterious casino? Well, perhaps one of these properties was this demolition site in the market area of Los Santos. Its model name is called Buyable 1, while its texture container is called Buy. If you think about it, it makes perfect sense. Something was demolished by Starball's demolition, so why not introduce this feature to players over here? Another similar place can be found in East Los Santos, with an internal model name having Puchas in it. No, I didn't mispronounce that, that's how they spelled it. Probably a typo on their part. But anyway, this place definitely stands out too, with its perfectly square-shaped empty land. Either something was cut here, or it was a clear indication from a design perspective for the player to buy and build something. By looking at very early map renders, we can see that initially there was just a green zone with some trees here. A little bit later, judging from the color, they started to draw a box-shaped building on the map. Even though the final map shows a green zone again, other game assets still show a property being here, and it's unclear if they came up with a building or the aforementioned empty land like that. There's also this empty construction site in the Garcia neighborhood in San Fierro, but at this time there's nothing indicating that it had something to do with the cut feature. There is the sign outside of it that says development opportunity, but it could have just been there for show too. Apart from all of that, we have some leftovers in the code indicating that it had something to do with setting a property to the so-called multi-building, something that was completely cut from the game, but was controlled through the shopping class. These multi-buildings were part of the map. One removed script command suggests that the game could probably change or set its model in real time, maybe after selecting something in the shopping menu. Another removed script command suggests that it also had something to do with the so-called buyable properties. That explains why the demolition site and market is called the buyable one. I bet there were many like it. And that's pretty much all we could find about this cut feature by examining the game. Unfortunately, there's nothing that tells us about what we could have built on these properties. I mean, there is zero code left in the property script.sc file. There are no other leftovers in the rest of the mission sources, and there are no interesting clues in the text sources. I have a strong feeling that they abandoned this idea about halfway through. It perfectly explains why at some point during development, Rockstar just began to pretend that this feature didn't even exist. 4 months after that Game Informer article, PSM2 magazine directly asked Rockstar how the property acquisition system would work. Instead of answering the question directly, a representative simply said that you can indeed acquire properties, but that they were still working on the finer details. Perhaps what Hauser said about acquiring properties having been taken a lot further wasn't true anymore by that time. I mean, it would be stupid to say that it hadn't changed much from Vice City until now, and that would explain why they didn't really want to go into detail about it. As for building and running a casino, honestly, I have no freaking clue about this either. I literally found nothing, and the developers had never talked about it again, as if it never even existed as well. 5 months after the Game Informer article, EGM asked about the possibility of CJ buying and running his own casino, to which, as they stated, Rockstar representatives just smiled. So there you have it. There's literally nothing telling us how buying and constructing properties would have actually worked, and what we could have built apart from the casino, but there's still one straw we can pull out. Knowing that Rockstar reuses old concepts and scrapped ideas from previous games in their future products, the empire building in GTA Vice City stories is the closest thing I could think of. If you didn't know, in that game there are various rival establishments around the city that we can destroy. Once it's done, the property is put up for sale, and once we buy it, we can turn it into any business venture that we want, with each having a different cost to build. When we decide on what to build, the property will be under construction for some time. Once it's ready, we can operate our business from inside by taking missions or managing the property. Maybe it was going to be something like that in San Andreas. I mean, conceptually it feels very close to it, having viable properties, multi-building, and running businesses, but sadly that's just a theory. Did you know that there was going to be an additional cheat code under the codename of Predator? Thanks to the Android version of the game, we know its name and the unique gamepad combination activate it, but it's completely useless. Apart from triggering cheat activated, it does absolutely nothing in the game because there's no code for it. What if the intent of the developers was for it to spawn the Predator? It's a unique police boat with powerful machine guns that you can use to wreak havoc with, so I'd say that makes it a perfectly fine cheat. If that theory is correct, then it would be the only cheat that spawned a boat. I'm actually wondering why it was never implemented. Vehicle spawning cheats are very easy to code. It only takes changing the model and that's it. Maybe they just forgot about it. Now let's talk about the lowrider minigame, a rhythm-based challenge where we can compete in a lowrider against an opponent by placing a wager. A well-known activity in the game, I might add. But what you didn't know is that, judging from the leaked file, the developers also had an idea for the player to bet their car and put their car keys at stake. As the string suggests, it could have been done by pressing circle on the controller while choosing a wager. Apart from that, we don't know anything about it. The mission source code mentions nothing about this feature, meaning it was either never implemented in the first place, or it was cut very early on. When I asked about the basketball minigame on Twitter, most of you thought that this activity was mediocre and definitely not a very popular thing to do in the game. And it's easy to understand why. All you do is shoot hoops alone, there's no challenge to it. Some game reviewers even talked about that too, but it was going to be a bit different originally. At one point, the minigame was going to include an opponent that we could play against. Lucky for us, there are still some interesting leftovers that we can enable and look at. First, we have this unfinished defensive stance state, buried in the basketball scripts, solid evidence of having more than one player on the court. Too bad it soft locks Carl in this position, but I think there's an explanation for that. The developers had it in mind for a character in this position to move left and right, doing defensive slides, but the animation they prepared for it was never implemented in the code. Second, there's an unused block jump state indicating that you or your opponent could block a throw. If you wondered how it would potentially look in the game, then here's a good video showcasing this move. Judging from the animations, it could definitely be performed while being in a defensive stance, which of course was never coded either. No wonder why it also soft locks the player in a loop. The developers also tried to implement being able to steal the ball, but they gave up by that point since there's no code or animations that exist from this state. Maybe this is when Rockstar realized that it would be too complicated to make a fully functioning basketball minigame and decided to stick with a one-player version of it. Other cut strings reveal that this minigame was going to feature a betting system. The game once told you that if you wanted to shoot some hoops, you had to choose a wager, presumably set by your opponent that you could play against. So maybe it was a 1v1 kind of minigame. It must have been a very early idea. Rockstar literally reused the betting strings from the lowrider minigame. Even betting your car is still there, which makes no sense here. Back in the day when this game was still in development, Rockstar loved to make closed real-life sessions presenting the game to various game journalists. At some point, they showed off the new Burglar side mission. Judging from the articles written about this, originally it had some very distinct differences. The first major difference is that you had to buy a ski mask or a balaclava from a local sports store. If you don't remember, in the final game, this piece of clothing is automatically given to Carl as soon as you activate the odd job in the special Boxville that's internally called Boxburg, and it's taken away as soon as you cancel it. As a matter of fact, it can't even be purchased in the stores, which makes it a unique item. It isn't hard to guess that the sports store was Prolapse. Internally, it's still called a sports clothing store. The ski mask or balaclava was probably sold here among other sports headgear in the hats section before it was removed, and there was a solid reason to buy it before activating the Burglary side mission. All these articles mention that as soon as you equip a ski mask, you'll go into a sneaking mode, causing you to move more quietly than usual, which would help a ton when you're robbing houses at night. And you know what? This mechanic is still tied to wearing this exact item. Just like magic, as soon as Carl gets his balaclava, he goes into unique sneaking animations. And there's not just that. He also makes less noise when moving, just like the articles described. What they didn't mention is that Carl becomes quieter by 6 decibels. However, there's a major flaw in that. Imagine just casually buying this item only to find out that whenever you wear it, you'll walk around like a creep during free roam. That was probably the case in an earlier version of the game. And it brings a question to mind. Was covering your face an optional thing to do? The articles don't state that directly, they describe it more as a good thing to do before a robbery, rather than it strictly being a requirement. If we try to do a valet side mission, then it does require us to wear the uniform, but there's at least a text string and a code suggesting that you put the uniform on. If we go to do a burglary, there are no leftovers suggesting that you had to get your face covered first. If it was indeed an optional thing to do, then it would explain why Carl on this pre-release screenshot wears casual clothes while being inside someone's house. Articles use this screenshot while talking about this new odd job, and who gave them this screenshot? Rockstar, of course. So I decided to remove this requirement from the side mission to see if there are any remnants from the choice that we made. Well, it plays just fine. It doesn't add any difficulty in robbing houses, but at the same time it looks awkward without the sneaking animations. And the footsteps are too freaking loud. It's killing the vibe of being a midnight robber. Those 6 decibels make a huge difference. Either way, I think they changed it for the better. Too bad you could only wear the ski mask in the side mission though. On the other hand, by doing so, they didn't have to make a cutscene model with a moving mouth. Another interesting tidbit I found in these articles is that they always say buying a ski mask or a balaclava, as if these were 2 completely different items that could activate the sneaking mode. The problem with that statement is they had never showed any different burglary headwear apart from this mask. If you ask me, I think it was always just one type of headgear. Here's why. Internally, the mask is still called a balaclava, while in-game it's always referred to as the ski mask. Rockstar probably renamed it when it appeared in Prolapse to make it sound more sportish, but who knows. You know what's even weirder? The articles always talked about the robbery vehicle in a vague manner. Some called it a moving van, others called it a moving truck, or a decent-sized truck, or even a delivery van, but never the Boxville, which journalists probably would have remembered from Vice City. That makes me think that originally you could jack any decent-sized vehicle and start the odd job, but that's pure speculation on my end. There's no evidence left in the code about that. What I can actually prove is that it was once an ordinary Boxville, instead of the special version of it by the name of Boxburg, which is parked in 3 different locations. This means you could definitely jack one from traffic and start burglarizing houses at the right time. Maybe this is what journalists saw during Rockstar's presentations without hearing that it had to specifically be a Boxville. As you can see, the burglar side mission in general hasn't changed much since those articles. But these minor changes give us a perfect idea of how Rockstar developed this game, and how they left what worked and scrapped what didn't. According to the leaked mission source code, text strings, and a brief mention in one early article, there was going to be a Hitchhiker odd job. It probably started here in El Quebrados, after entering this green Saddler. Despite the fact that the odd job was cut, this pickup still refers to this cut activity in the mission sources. Judging from the leftover text, the goal was to complete 10 different hitches driving this exact car. The R token in this string, "You've screwed up the vehicle," indicates that it was a mission failure, so you had to keep the car intact the entire time. But what about the hitchhikers? Well, we know one place where we could pick them up. It was an unknown airport, and 4 specific places we had to take them to: Hicks County, Jefferson, East Los Santos, and Los Flores. The most interesting destination of them all is Hicks County with a campsite, and only because there's no such place in the game anymore. Was it a temporary or an early name for an area that we already have? We don't know. The rest of the destinations in Los Santos probably weren't even the real ones, as it clearly shared the text with the pimping odd job. So I started to think, what if the developers at some point made a hitchhiker odd job from pimping? It would perfectly explain why the leftover code is always found next to the pimping side mission, and why the leftover strings have the same numbers. I don't think we're missing tons of text from this cut side mission because it just didn't even exist. If my theory is correct, then Rockstar only prepared one ride before scrapping the whole hitchhiking idea. The ride started with the game telling us that there's a group of backpackers who just got off a flight, so we had to drive them from there. When we arrived at the airport, the backpackers would greet us and ask Carl if he could give them a ride to Hicks County. Since the Saddler is a 2-door pickup, a group leader said that their friends could ride in the bed. I doubt we could refuse this. The leader thanks us and said that they were heading out to a camp for a few days, and then they would tell their friends to hop in. These 3 strings perfectly align with one another. The rest do not. Yet again, if I am right, then the developers had not been working on this odd job much. Maybe because the whole idea feels kinda boring. I mean, conceptually, you're just driving around casually giving hitchhikers a ride in a mediocre pickup truck. What would be the point of this when it's basically just another taxi side mission? Little wonder why it was scrapped. The interesting thing is, the green Saddler spawning in El Quebrados isn't the only remnant from this cut side mission left in the final game. There are also these 2 hiker pose animations, made for this specific side mission. For those who don't know, this is a well-known hitchhiking hand gesture signaling that someone needs a ride. Hey, there's maybe a chance you could have seen this in real life too. You might be surprised, but these animations are actually used when pedestrians are hailing a taxi. I'm not sure why the developers decided to use the hitchhiking gesture when there's a proper animation stored in the files for that occasion, but thanks to that, this animation remains unused. Something tells me that Rockstar just didn't want to reuse the Vice City animation. In all the years that passed after San Andreas, this odd job finally appeared in GTA 5, in random events by the name of hitch lifts. They even show the appropriate hand gesture, which is neat. According to the mission sources, there were going to be 2 more odd jobs in this game. The first one is a side mission codenamed Director, and its coordinates lead us here, where I created a red marker. Unfortunately, nothing in the code is using these coordinates, so it's unknown if it was a spawn point for a vehicle or just an ordinary marker. What's more mysterious about it is that it definitely had something to do with the Vinewood movie studios. The only question is, what exactly did we do here? Directing a movie? Then the coordinates don't make any sense, unless there was an entrance to the movie studio at some point. This place definitely changed a lot during development, but the early map render is too low quality to make a conclusion on this. A lack of leftovers in the sources might suggest that Rockstar scrapped this odd job right from the beginning. The second cut odd job had a codename of Limo, and its coordinates lead us to a parking lot in Willowfield. Once again, nothing is using these coordinates, so we have no clue if it was a mission marker or a spawn point for a vehicle. But it definitely had something to do with the limousine. Perhaps a cut limo driver odd job using the stretch. But why exactly did it start in a low-income district with a high crime rate? Nothing makes sense here. For more videos on GTA and Rockstar games, check out my channel here on YouTube called BadgerGoodger. And don't forget to follow both Vadim and myself on what used to be called Twitter. This has been Badger narrating for Vadim, and I hope you have a great rest of your day out there.